Aquifer is a formation that contains significant amount of water that can be transmitted at sufficient rates. Aquiclude, a saturated formation that contains relatively impermeable material that does not yield appreciable quantities of water. It may serve as confining layer for some aquifers. Aquitard, saturated but poorly permeable stratum that impedes groundwater movement. It does not yield water freely to wells but may transport water to or from adjacent aquifer. It occupies an intermediate position bet. Aquifer and aquiclude. Classifications of aquifer. Confined aquifer is bounded above and below by a relatively impermeable layer. Unconfined aquifer is a permeable bed overlying a relatively impervious layer. Its upper boundary is formed by a free water table or free level under atmospheric pressure. Leaky or semi-confined aquifer is overlain and underlain by a relatively impermeable layer. Lowering of piezometric head will tend to generate a vertical flow of water from a semi-pervious layer into the pumped aquifer. Last but not the least is perched aquifer. When a groundwater is separated by a concaved upward impermeable layer. This is a special type of water table aquifer with small areal extent. A well penetrating a perched aquifer may be exhausted during dry months or when intensive pumping is done. Aquifer characteristics. Specific retention. Not all groundwater present in the aquifer can be withdrawn or removed through pumping or drainage. A portion of the stored water is tightly held by the adhesive forces between the soil particles and the soil molecules. Specific retention is the measure of the water retained by the soil formation against gravity. Fine-grained soils generally retain more water than coarse-grained ones. Specific yield. The volume of water yield per unit volume of the formation is termed as the specific yield of the aquifer. It gives an estimate of the available water supply due to an increment of rise in the water table during the period of recharge, as well as the water can be extracted for each incremental lowering of the water table. Storage coefficient. The water yield in an unconfined aquifer has a counterpart in confined aquifers known as storage coefficient. Even with the removal of water, saturated condition remains in artesian aquifers. Water withdrawal is reflected mainly in the change in piezometric head and the slight change in the aquifer volume due to aquifer compression from overlying layer. Conductivity or permeability. Permeability or aquifer conductivity refers to the capacity of a porous medium to allow fluid to flow through a cross-sectional area. It is a measure of the ease with which an aquifer will transmit water. It is influenced by both the properties of water, viscosity, and the aquifer materials, for example porosity, particle size distribution, degree of packing and stratification. Transmissibility. In confined aquifer, the product of aquifer thickness and hydraulic conductivity is referred to as transmissibility. It is a measure of potential discharge rate of well penetrating an aquifer. The magnitude of transmissibility is, therefore, an indication of the economic value of an aquifer. Bored or augered wells. turbo-driven wells. Jetted wells. Cable to lure percussion method. Hydraulic rotary method. Reverse rotary method. Turbo drilling method.